Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you. How's everybody? Hello.
Oh, real. Okay.
Aloha.
Are you guys having fun today? Yeah. Good. We're so glad to be here. You know, if you can't have a good time in Hawaii, when can you have a good time?
Exactly.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's going on, guys? How y'all doing?
Yeah, I guess we'll have just kind of, this is a Q&A, so any questions you have for any of us about animation, about how things are done in show business, any about our particular characters, feel free to come up. And you guys are running this. We want to answer whatever you guys want to know about us.
Yeah.
So come on up.
I want you to do your Vin Scully impression.
My Vin Scully. All right, now here we are in Dodger Stadium, and we go on to our first question from someone out there in the audience.
Nice. I like it.
I'm between these two geniuses. I can't even believe it.
All right. Hi.
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 My question is for everyone. So if there was a cocktail or a mocktail based on one of your characters, what would it be named and what would be in it?
I think I would have the Soul Stone, and I suppose it would have some sort of red liqueur and probably a lot of bourbon.
Yeah.
That sounds.
So to warm you up, but also make you feel really weird after the fact. Yeah.
I expect the drink would be called the Tahitian, and it would be. This is Dutch Vanderland, by the way, from Red Dead, if you don't know. And I suppose it'd be whiskey and coconut.
Yeah, I guess just straight bourbon for me because it makes me goofy.
Nice.
Well played.
Thank you.
Well played.
That's a great question. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Hey, Bill.
Hi.
Can Goofy speak pigeon?
Could Goofy,
Pigeon?
can Goofy
Speak.
The Hawaiian.
Gorge, I can't even speak English. Yeah, I don't know how to. No, that's a good question. I'll have to work on that.
You'd help me some pigeon, yeah.
Do you know pigeon? I don't
Well, they tried to teach me some pigeon yesterday.
Oh, did they?
Or
I
the
know.
other day, so.
Local dialect.
At first, I thought I meant the bird. And I was like, cool. And they said, no, you're crazy. That's not what we mean. They set me straight.
In pigeon,
Good.
one of the most popular and easiest things to say is shoots.
Shoots.
Shoot.
Shoot.
How's it?
Shoot.
How's
You
it?
gotta say it with like a Z. Like, how's it?
How's it?
Shoot.
Shoots. Nice.
Okay.
Hi, Bill. I grew up on the old Goofy shorts from way back when I was in elementary school.
So did I, yeah.
I always loved his little woo-hoo-hoo sound.
Oh, the
when he
laugh,
fell.
yeah, or the
Can
yell,
you do that
actually.
for me, please?
Yeah, the history of that, it actually wasn't the voice of Goofy that did that. Pinto Colvig, who originated the voice, didn't do that. It was from a cartoon in 1947 called The Art of Skiing. It was one of those, the beauty of skiing, you know, and we had one of those how-to. And it was a yodeler, German yodeler by the name of Hans Schroll. And he did some yodeling. And I always have to do that. I don't know why I don't just library it and get it right one time, but they always have me do it about every week. And I always have to do it at least twice. If it's a new engineer, I definitely have to do it more than once because it's really loud. And to get it, you just have to do it just all out. And I'll say, okay, this is loud. And they go, okay, I'm ready. And you go, and the guy's like, geez, okay, you know. Yeah, let's turn that back, and I have to do it again, and you know, then they get it right. But yeah, I've done that hundreds and hundreds of times over the years. I don't know why they just don't do it once right and let me alone.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I want to know where you got your outfit.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. Well, you too, but you in the orange. Yeah. I want to know where you got that outfit.
On eBay?
Nice. All the best stuff comes from eBay. That's great. Yeah. You guys know any new jokes? Cool. All right.
Well, I think, maybe to kind of get this thing going, maybe it'll stir some questions or something. We could go down the line. And how did you get into show business? I'd like to know that from both of you. You know,
That's a fair
kind of a, you know, because everyone's got a different. Everyone in show business, people always say, "How do you get into show business?" There's no one way. About everyone I've ever met has a whole different story.
Yeah.
So, how did you get into?
Mine was kind of born out of a desire to not get my ass kicked all the time. My brothers, I have two older brothers who used to relentlessly torment me and beat the crap out of me, and it was partially, you know, if I made them laugh and made my parents laugh, it would just kind of bring the tension down in the family, because, you know, growing up we weren't poor by any means, but, you know, money was sometimes a factor, and you know, like most the youngest of the family is kind of like, I gotta make everything better and I gotta fix everything. So I noticed that the one guy who could really consistently make my parents laugh and my whole family laugh was Johnny Carson. And I realized that if I could emulate Johnny Carson, I might be able to make them laugh for a little bit and forget about their problems, and that's where it all started. And it says from there I was just like more and more voices, and it was just really born out of a desire to make other people happy, which is why I'm a horrible people pleaser all the time. So yeah. But yeah, that's where it all started.
That's amazing. I didn't realize you were the youngest of three. I'm the youngest of three too. And I had one brother that was really excellent at sort of debate and that sort of thing. I wasn't terrible at debate, but another brother used to give it to me pretty good. And he was excellent. He was a jock, and it made me sort of sports averse. Yeah. And so the arts was really a place for me to feel like I had something that I was good at, and so that became sort of the focus of my attention. I tried, because most everybody will tell you, if you want to go off, you know, and be an actor, run off, join the circus. Don't do it. Yeah. It's going to be hard, and that's all quite true. I tried very hard to listen to that advice, and I went to a school not to train as an actor, and found myself not really happy except working in the theater at that school. And I took a leap of faith and ended up enrolling at New York University to get training as an actor, and I got my degree in '95. If this is ever streamed, my mother would be upset if I didn't point out with honors. I'm not sure what that's good for. It didn't get me a job. But then it took, you know, I did a lot of theater in New York for a long time, and this was before the internet and before you could really sort of, everything you sort of did in the theater evaporated. And I was very interested in making things that endured, and so the natural progression is to go to Los Angeles, and you know, you get there and you're like, I'm here, and everybody's so excited. Oh, another actor? Oh, great, come on. But I just sort of grinned and bore it for a long time, and you get little bits here and there. My first real break, if anything, was a show called 6 Feet Under, and there's a wonderful artist named Jill Soloway. They did Transparent, and they gave me my first role, which was a Dr. Exposition on 6 Feet Under, and that was kind of the start of everything. And I've been plugging away ever since.
I was just one of those kids that from the time I can remember, I loved cartoons and movies. I was just nuts for movies, and I grew up in South Central Kansas, which we had tumbleweeds and tornadoes. That was all we had, and no one that I ever knew was in show business. It was like, you know, Hollywood was a million miles away. I didn't think it was possible, but I grew up and I was always, you know, playing with voices and stuff, even at an early age, and I would come to dinner and I would start trying out voices on my parents. And I think probably the first voice I ever someone said, hey, that sounds like him, was Don Adams of Get Smart, if you remember him in the old. And then I'd start doing comedians and stuff like Jack Benny was a great voice. And I'd do that, and I'd say, Mom, I'd like mashed potatoes. And our Billy's weird, you know. My dad there's something wrong with him, you know. Didn't know what to do. And so in school, in high school in Kansas, we would, a football team would fight the Dodge City Demons or whoever, and we would do pep assemblies, and they found I did a John Wayne impression, and so they'd say, get out and do something, and so I'd go out there in front of the student body. I was very shy at the time, but for some reason, doing a voice you can hide behind that and you can become the character. And I'd say, well, we're going to go out there and get them Dodge City Demons and we're going to whip them tonight, aren't we? And, well, that's right, we're going to be whipping them. And my friends, well, that's cool, man. So as I got older, my friends would put me up to this stuff. We'd drive through Burger King and they'd say, like, order in a weird voice. And I'd like a Whopper with cheese, and Arnold the pig would like a Coca-Cola, and they'd look out, and it's cool. So it kind of became just a thing that I always got put up to do stuff. So when I went to college, I got my degree in journalism, and I figured that was closest. Radio was pretty close, and I started writing, learning how to write jokes and stuff, because if I put me up at like band breaks in college, they'd say, get up, farmer, get up and do something. I had to have some material, so I started writing a little stuff. And I kicked around in radio for a number of years, which is great, because if you want to get into show business, you need a place to suck. Because you're going to start out you hopefully will get better with time, but you need some place that you can practice your art and be bad at it. And Little Podunk Radio was great for me because I would invent characters. I was so bored that I'd I'd bring in guests like Wolfman Jack was a DJ at the time, and
Oh, yeah, baby, we're going to be playing Stacks of Wax from dusk till dawn, baby. Hey, Bill, what's going on?
hey, Wolfman, welcome to the show. And I'd do all of these characters and stuff. I didn't know there was probably copyrights of his voice and stuff. So I just kind of developed characters. And then I kicked around in radio for a number of years, got into, in Dallas back in 1982, there was a comedy club there, and you could go up and do like 5 minutes on a Tuesday night, and I saw it one week, and I said, if I don't give that a shot, I'm going to kick myself when I'm older. So I went up and wrote a little 5-minute routine, did that, and the house comic who went on to fame, a guy named Bill Engvall, was a house comic, and he said, hey, I think you got something with the voices and stuff, you ought to do that. So I started coming back. And about 6 months later, I started kind of doing some of the Houston and Abilene and Austin, around in Texas, and I became a stand-up. Long story short, I did that for about 4 years until 1986, when an agent said, you ought to go out to Hollywood with all this voices you do and give it a shot. And I said, well, I might as well. So I left my wife in Dallas, got an apartment in Hollywood, and as luck would have it, after 12 years of doing all this stuff, my first animated character audition was for Goofy. And they just said, do you do any of the Disney characters? And people would, he'd say, if you can do a falsetto, gosh, oh boy, you're kind of in the ballpark for Mickey. So I said, I can kind of do Mickey, and of course, Goofy was my favorite Disney character. So, I tried out for that, and boom, I got that. And you're not signed to you are now the voice forever. You go in for one job, you get a day player contract. You never know if you're going to do it again. And then a month later, I did it again, and then again and again. And after 32 years, I'm still doing it. So that's kind of how I got here. So
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the lovely applause.
So out of curiosity, where are you all from? I know you mentioned Central Kansas. Ben, you said
I'm
New York?
originally from Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston.
Then I lived briefly in Chicago, then New York for about 10 years, and now I've been in Angelino, such as it is, for 20 years.
Wow.
I am from Littleton, Colorado, just south of Denver, and I moved to LA about 15 years ago, but I currently reside most of the time in Georgia, where we shoot the Walking Dead. So
Yes,
yeah,
makes sense.
Cool. Yeah.
So have you guys been to Hawaii before?
Yeah.
I
Honorable
have.
mention.
I've been to Maui. That was also about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I got married a long time ago. I got married in '84, and I knew I'd be going on my honeymoon to Hawaii, so I took a diving class because I'd always wanted to do that. And we came here, and we stayed at Waikiki, and then we went over to Maui, and I got to go diving over near the island of Lanai. And I mean, you just fall in love. It's like, that's where you go when you die. You just go to Maui. It's just so pretty. And I remember the diving boat guy had been like an insurance salesman in like Pittsburgh, I believe it was. I got talking with him. He had come out to Maui and just fell in love with it. Never went back to even close down. He says, "I'm quitting, guys." And he stayed in Maui, started this little diving boat, and he'd been doing it for like 20 years, and I totally understand why. So it's always a joy to come back. I've been back probably about 10 times, over and I love it. As a matter of fact, I think we're spending our Christmas here in Maui just because I don't need another toaster and stuff, but the experience of coming out here and just hanging out on the beach, I could do that forever.
Oh. Ross? Have you been?
What was it?
to Hawaii?
Sorry, yeah. I was like, what was it?
You're
I
good.
was just enthralled with the story. This is my 4th time in Hawaii, and this is my first time without the family.
Yeah.
So I get to be like a proper
Ooh, get to
adult
do a lot of
experiencing it.
things.
I was like, yeah, the nightlife. All right, cool. I'm excited. Yeah.
Anyone else want to ask questions?
Hey.
Hello. I was watching your Back to the Future impressions yesterday, and it was really funny. And Ross, I had no idea you can do such good impressions. So my question for you, Ross, is who's your favorite celebrity to do an impression of, and can you do an impression of them?
Sure. I don't know if I have a favorite. I mean, it kind of fluctuates based on my mood. I think if I'm trying to be philosophical, I usually do McConaughey. If I'm trying to be really goofy, I do John C. Reilly, Wreck-It Ralph for some of you kids out there. But yeah, I think McConaughey is just like one of those guys who just like when he talks about life. It's this thing like you're out there thinking about yourself from a third dimensional perspective, and you're saying, well, what's going on here? Am I really here? Am I on this earth? Is this matter really here? Or are these just particles that are floating around in space? A fugazi, and it's not. Who knows? Maybe we're the dream of a dreamer that's dreaming far off in space. We don't even know. We have no idea if this is actually even happening. This could all be a simulation, man. You know what I mean? Like, it could all be crazy. We wake up one day and we realize it was all just a computer program. Wouldn't that be something? All right. Yeah. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any Marvel superheroes or supervillains that have yet to appear in the Marvel universe you'd like to see on the big screen?
I really want to see Moon Knight. Moon Knight, growing up, yeah. I mean, like as a kid, I was always, I think when you're starting out in comics, you're force fed, the X-Men and all the, the normal, like these are like your entry level, like Spider-Man, X-Men.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. They're great characters. But when you go further into the Marvel universe, like I did quite a bit when I was a kid, I used to like just mow lawns for the sole purpose of buying more comics and comic book cards. I was that kid. Probably why I don't have any money right now, because I spend it all on comics. But Moon Knight was one of those characters that just I knew there was something really interesting about him, and as they go into the story of how he became the character that he is, aside from being resurrected by Khonshu, the Egyptian god, but later in the series, I can't remember the name of the author who first really delved into this, but once they talk about his dissociative identity disorder, that this might all be in his head, and it might not be happening at all, and he might just be like a psycho killer. That's exciting, because that's, I think, what a real superhero probably would be like. I think if you're willing to don a mask and a cape and a cowl and you're going out vigilante justice and actually killing people, unlike Batman always throws them in Arkham Asylum. Moon Knight actually killed people.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting superhero, you know. So I would love to see him. But
For me, in terms of villains that I'd like to see, Kraven the Hunter is my guy. I mean, Spider-Man was my jam.
Yeah.
I was reading him from the time he got the black suit, which was 252.
Oh, okay.
I was 12. And, yeah. But Kraven, anybody, The Last Hunt, wasn't that? It was like a 4-issue miniseries, Last Hunt. And Kraven was like just a broken man. And kind of, Marvel always had this ability to take these characters that were created in a certain time and then move them and make them relevant in another time, most notably with Captain America, when Stan Lee brought him back from the Silver Age. But Kraven the Hunter was sort of we've moved away from a culture that sort of valued the trophy hunter, and he has sort of become a dinosaur of sorts. And I find that quite an interesting narrative to explore, is what happens to people that are driven by goals that no longer, in a world that no longer values those goals. So I think he's cool on that level.
That's very philosophical, you know.
I have moments. I do have moments.
I'm old. I'm not up to date on all my current villains and everything. When I just still am totally in shock that my mom threw out my #1 Fantastic Four that I had, and I threw that out. You know, I could have had a house with that. So.
That's,
yeah.
Was it in good condition?
All of my comics were like 10 centers. That's when I was collecting.
63, 64?
Yeah, about then. Yep. I mean, I met Stan Lee at one of these things. I told him that, and he, tough luck, kid. Excelsior!
Thank you.
Of course.
She's going to teach us pigeon.
Yeah.
We were explaining the nuance of the shotgun, how's it, and stuff to him earlier.
you up to the mic a
Thank
bit?
you for being here.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So you all have been in the entertainment industry for a while, so you've seen how changes have happened over the years with new media. Now there's YouTube and the internet. But I just wanted to know, is there something that you're kind of excited about, whether it's a project that you're working on or something that you see coming up? One thing that I find kind of interesting is the way that the internet has kind of democratized the way that people can be found by, they can put out a YouTube video, and if that, has interest for people, then they're able to, not necessarily have to fly to LA to find an audience. And it's just changing so fast every day. Like when I was a kid, Mario just went across the screen, right? And now it's like you have VR, and there's all these different kinds of technologies. And maybe part of the reaction is people are going back to or really find nostalgia in simple 2D animation. Like I was just watching The Little Mermaid with my son last night. He loves princesses. He finds them, fun. And there's the Eric shirt there. But yeah, I don't know if there's something that you find in the entertainment industry, whether it's movies or cartoons that you're nostalgic about, or any project that you're excited about.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
For me, technology changed. When I first started, we did a lot of ensemble recording, at least over at Disney. Now it's all solo acting. So I come in, and Mickey comes in at another day, depending on schedules and stuff. So it's a lot more imagination. You don't have the other actors to bounce off of, at least over at Disney. Projects that I'm working on now and are excited about, there's a new series called Amphibia that is on the Disney Channel that just premiered this month, and I play the grandfather, and now it's typecasting, and named Hop Pop, and so he was kind of based on Ross Perot, but he's kind of got a frog. He's kind of a gripey frog. That's a lot of fun. I got a movie coming out. I did my first horror picture this year. A friend of mine was producing one. It's called Desert Shadows, and it's a very low budget one. But I said, I'll be in the movie if I can get killed by the monster. I wanted to get killed, and so I'm kind of a detective, and I get impaled by an arm, which it was a blast doing, it's like a right through here, so, And when you do that, you feel kind of stupid. I'm standing here with this arm while they're getting the camera ready, and they had like a PVC pipe under my arm full of blood and guts and stuff, and then they loaded my mouth with fake blood, so when they go hit, and in slow motion, you go, you spit the blood, they hit the thing, it blows guts all over the place. It was a great deal of fun.
When
great.
the monster killed you, did it go, "Let me give you a hand"?
It's kind of a dark comedy, kind of a thing. And there's always new stuff that are fun to do. And some other stuff I can't talk about yet, but there's always stuff that you're doing. And hey, as long as they keep hiring me, I'm happy.
It's interesting you talk about the democratization of content because, you guys heard of Justin Bieber? Yeah. I mean, that guy just put up stuff on YouTube 10 years ago, which is insane to think about. I mean, that YouTube came out in 2006, and I think we forget sometimes just how new media is. It's so fresh. And that's how I got a lot of my gigs. It was just putting up stuff on my, crappy phone or my flip cam back then. I don't know if you remember flip cams, but
I remember
flip cams. Yeah, they were kind of great. You had a USB port that came out the side, and you could just plug it in and edit everything on some crappy editing software and put it up on YouTube. And it was amazing because that was kind of the wild west of the internet. Everyone was just trying to see what was going to stick. Is YouTube actually going to become something you could make money on? And I actually worked with Lisa Nova and some of those cats who started Maker Studio. And I don't know if you guys know about Maker, but Maker sold their studio to Disney in 2010, I want to say, for $500 million. So there's certainly a market for it. And I think, to your point, this right here can shoot better footage than 90% of the cameras that we had back in the early 2000s. I mean,
right.
You were shooting on Panasonic, HVX or whatever it was, and okay, but pretty crappy quality actually. These things are incredible.
Yeah.
And I think it just gives the power to the content creators to just make your own stuff, and I think it's wonderful. And to your other question, I'm working on Invincible, Robert Kirkman's other comic IP, which is awesome, and I'm so excited for you guys to see it. It's like a very dark comic, and I think it's going to be on Netflix next year. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I would agree with completely about the phone. I mean, I spent a whole summer to get a half-inch Panasonic video camera. I would make films when I was a kid on. I had to edit reel-to-reel black and white video. I was born in '72. I'm not like that, but anyway. But this, you could do Jurassic Park with this. The first one. It's got the processing power. The thing I was lucky enough as a kid, it's summers I would go to a place in Dover, Massachusetts called Charles River Creative Arts Program, and I was there as a camper, and I would make movies and art, and then I was there as a teacher as well. And they just had their 50th anniversary, and I went back and talked to the campers about, it's exciting for them that Dutch Vanderlyn went to their camp, and I showed them a scene, and we talked about performance capture, which is this very sort of exciting tech where it's like motion capture, that you're in a costume covered with ping pong balls, looking pretty ridiculous, but you also have a helmet on your head with a camera. So, and you can have multiple actors, all unlike what you're dealing with now with you're going in on a different day than Mickey is. This is the game that we put together over 5 years. It was all of the ensemble together at all times. But you couldn't help but think, you could take, the thing about theater, if you've ever seen you go and you see a school play, and it's a different thing than when you watch the tape of it. When you watch the tape of it, it's like the soul has been taken out of it. There's nothing to it. But with this technology, you could put all those actors in these suits, and you could build the sets, and you could actually record theater for posterity. But as I'm talking to these 8 to 15-year-old campers and remembering when I was where they are, the thing that is exciting to me is this performance capture technology. Currently, you have to be as big as Rockstar or EA in order to afford it, in order to get it done. But the way things move, I think in 5 years' time, certainly in 10 years' time, instead of saving up for the summer to buy a half-inch video camera, you're going to be able to save up, and you and your friends are going to be able to make your own video games or whatever else it might, Tron or anything.
Yeah.
And the idea of the democratization of it it's very exciting to me that all of this tech, because once it gets cheap enough, then it gets into the hands of young artists who are thinking about it in ways nobody ever intended for it to be thought of. And then that is what really provokes new eras in popular culture and in art. And so I'm so excited to see what the young aspiring artists today are going to be able to do with the tech that we already have. But when it gets into their hands, I think it's going to be thrilling. And as for what I have coming up, I'm bound by NDAs, I'll just say that. That's a really convenient excuse, by the way. That could mean nothing is coming. I have nothing. Does anybody have a job for me? I can do cowboys and
we'll
Chewbacca.
do weddings and bar mitzvahs and anything else.
Chewie, not here, here. Don't care what you smell, you big dumb oaf. Come over here.
This was when I was a kid on the playground. Like, everybody would get to be Han and get to be Luke. And I was the big guy, so it was always, you're Chewbacca. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So this one is for Ross. I think I saw an article online that said that Keanu Reeves is going to be playing Moon Knight, possibly.
What?
Yeah.
Come on.
No. That's awesome. Good for him, but I wanted to play Moon Knight.
Oh, you've been pitching.
Maybe you can talk him into it.
What's that?
Maybe you can talk him into it.
Maybe I'll be like, you got John Wick, man. You got the Matrix. Well, give one for me, man.
So, about the already being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, how did you land the role as like the Stone Keeper, Red Skull?
It was a funny thing where they had actually shot most or all of that with another actor, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say who, so I probably shouldn't. Hugo was approached. I don't know if it was a scheduling conflict or what, but they couldn't work it out, and they shot it with someone else, and then they were like, it's just not quite what we're trying to get across with Red Skull. So they randomly asked my manager if I did a Hugo Weaving impression, and I was like, I do an Agent Smith. Is that? And then they said, oh no, it's a German one. I was like Red Skull? Like, is that, because I didn't know what they meant at first. And I worked on that for a little bit, on the reference they gave me, and after like a week I sent it in, and a few weeks later I got the call, and it was the weirdest thing because, they shoot 20 minutes down the road from where we filmed The Walking Dead, and I had just gotten done with season 8, flown back to LA, got the call as I was driving back home, and then they're like, we need you in Atlanta right away. I'm like, I just left there. God, what a timing. Okay, fine. And I put myself on the next flight out, and it was the easiest, truly most enjoyable and easiest day of filming in my life because, to Ben's point, like you're in the mocap suit, you do the head cam, and they do the dots on the face, and then you're just free to be like a theater actor. You're just floating around as they, come on in, and they get to do everything in post. And it was a great experience because the Russo brothers are incredible, and they knew exactly what they wanted with the character. They were like, we don't want him to sound as a straight voice match to Hugo. We want him to sound a little older and more broken. So they wanted like a dark Yoda sound, is what they said. They're like, yes. Broken soul you are, yes. And so did that mixed with the Hugo. So yeah, that's where it came from.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the next question is for all three of you. If you could play any Marvel character that has or hasn't been done yet in like the cinematic universe, who would you play?
I guess I don't get to play Moon Knight now, so...
I don't know if that's true. I don't know.
Taskmaster is also really badass.
He's cast. He's booked.
Are you kidding?
He's in Black Widow.
That is certain?
For real, yeah.
Okay.
It's a tough business, man. It's a tough business.
I don't know, slapstick? I guess no one wants to play slapstick, so I guess I'll play slapstick, Who do you want to
I do. I've already got a small corner. I'm Agent Burley in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I'd love to play him again. Yeah. But for the extraordinary, I'm going to say, and I don't often say, the impeccable job that Vincent D'Onofrio did with the Kingpin, I would really like a crack at that scary guy. I think I could do that. So we don't know if he's going to come over, but I'd go for that. But I'll take being Agent Burley and just chasing Giant Man through San Francisco. That's enough for me. I couldn't even believe it when I got the call for that.
Oh gosh, well, I haven't done much in the Marvel universe, but says. Of any superhero, I guess it'd have to be Thor, because my wife loves Chris Hemsworth. That's what. So have a much better home life with that.
All right, thanks guys so much.
Thank you very much.
I'm so sorry about Taskmaster, man. I hate to
Break my heart.
Yeah, I did for Bill. Did you ever do any Looney Tunes characters? I heard you do a few impressions, but did you actually get to voice any of the Looney Tunes?
Sorry, the voice of Looney Tunes.
Looney Tunes? Oh, I've done some Looney Tunes, yeah. I was fortunate enough to meet Mel Blanc way back in... I did some background voices in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And, Mel was, of course, in the movie Space Jam, I got to do Sylvester the Cat and Fluffer and Fuckatash, they're monsters, I got to say things like that, and... Foghorn Leghorn, big old chicken. That boy's about as sharp as a bowling ball. And I did one line as Yosemite Sam and about ripped my throat out. Oz hates rabbits, And Robot Chicken, I've done Bugs and Daffy.
Oh, brother, ain't I a stinker? You're despicable. Hoo-hoo!
So I've done a few of those. And I was fortunate enough, I took classes when I first came to L.A. from Dawes Butler, who was a great voice actor for Hanna-Barbera, who did Why Yogi Bear and Snagglepuss that I did yesterday, and like Captain Crunch. And his real voice was like Captain Crunch. And you'd call him up. When I got out here, someone said, you ought to take classes from Dawes Butler. And I said, the Dawes Butler? And I call him up, and he was this short little guy. Hi, Bill. Well, why don't you come on over? And it'll cost. I usually charge $10, but if you don't have that, don't worry about it. And we'd go over for like 3 hours to his house in Beverly Hills, and you're learning from one of the greats. And he was the first one that really said, you're not someone just doing voices. You might be doing a character that has a funny voice, but it's from the emotion. It's from the personality is where the acting arises. So, and he was the first one, you're actors. It's not voice acting, it's voice acting, emphasis on the acting. And I credit him with a lot of my success because I took that to heart. So anyone who wants to get into this wacky business, take acting lessons. It's so important. You are an actor. It's not just doing funny voices. And, of course, Mel Blanc was, he was interesting in Roger Rabbit. He was a heavy smoker. And he was having some health problems. He was smoking and he had an oxygen tank. Expecting him to blow up, There goes Mel. But he could still do the voice up to the very end.
Wow, nice.
Sure.
That is amazing.
Thanks.
Hi, Ross. Do you think you'd be able to do Negan, Daryl Dixon, or Rick Grimes?
Well, I know there's a camera going. It's funny. Andy, who plays Rick, he's asked me many times to do Norman, and I've done Norman quite a few times, and it's one of my best impressions, but I can't do it because if it gets back to Norman, he will not like it. But I have done Negan a few times because I feel like Jeffrey's character is very accentuated. Like, oh hell yeah, it's kind of a cool, but that's not really how Jeffrey sounds in real life. So I feel comfortable doing that one, but. I learned the hard way. Like I did a impression for someone years ago. You know who? Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David.
Oh, sure.
So I was doing a Michael Keaton voice match for a film that he did on HBO, and he was laughing, and it was just kind of, messing up some of the takes. The engineer's like, Larry, you got to be quiet. We're hearing you laugh. He's like, I'm sorry, it's very interesting. He just does all these voices. It's crazy. And he's like, well, what else do you do? And I did like Brad Pitt and some other voices, and then the engineer goes, do Larry. And I'm like, well, it's, but that's not my bad. Pretty good. And he leans back in his chair like this, and he goes, it's not your best. And ever since then, I've never done an impression of a person that I'm working with. It's just not a good idea. Because they're like, oh, do an impression of me. But then you do it, and they're like, that's not what I sound like. And they get offended. So you never do it. You never do it. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. So the question was originally for Ross, but I guess it's going to go for Bill as well. Do you mind talk a little bit about work with Robot Chicken?
With who?
Robot Chicken?
Oh, yeah.
A Robot Chicken? I've done several episodes of that, just incidental voices and stuff. But the Bugs and Daffy, I did one where they were doing an 8-mile takeoff where they're doing a rap. So I had to do as Bugs Bunny rap with Elmer Fudd. What? And which was different because Seth Green's there, and I'm the whitest guy in America, so he wants me to rap. Okay, as Bugs. Okay, so he's feeding me lines. We're getting to the tempo of this thing. But he was great, and it's a whole different thing when you're doing a legacy character like that. You really try and do a good job because there's some really big shoes to fill. When you get to come up with your own kind of voice, then you can riff with it and kind of go in all sorts of different directions. But it was a little stressful doing that. But getting through the rap song and everything. But it came out really great, and Seth brought me back several times for other episodes, and he's great, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he's a big kid, really. Yeah. He's never grown up, and he'd be the first to admit it. But it's a lot of fun.
And he's sharp as a tack, too.
Yes,
I mean,
he is.
when you work with him in the booth, he's just riffing and doing ideas. Like he'll be like, just go, just see what happens, and being directed by someone who's also, in his own right, an incredible impressionist, voiceover person. He's just got a list of Seth's done a million projects that are just like, oh, I bow down to these, sir. But I'm mostly like the pitch hitter that comes in when they need like a celebrity voice match. I'm not usually like the original characters, like Seth and his buddy.
It's not
Breckenmeyer and those guys, they do a lot of them themselves. So I'm just kind of like, whenever they need me, like, put me in, coach. I'm mostly sitting on the bench, and then they give me like a line here and there, and it's fun. But they're awesome to work with. Yeah. So yeah.
You go. All right. How's it, guys? Thanks for coming. Ross, you kind of talked about the mistake of maybe making an impersonation of someone you work with, and I thought that brought up a good point about just general career advice, and sometimes the best lessons we learn are the mistakes we make. And so maybe if you guys could kind of talk about mistakes you've made in your path.
How much time do you have?
Maybe we skip Ross because he's already
2 hours on that.
talked about his. But
oh God, I've made so many.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, I take up too much of your time.
Gosh, mistakes. Sometimes gigs, you do gigs sometimes for money that you just think, okay, this is weird. I had to do a film when I first came out to Hollywood. I'd needed money, and they wanted me to do Ronald Reagan in a film. And I said, that'll be fun to, because
all right, I'll be glad to do that.
So I thought, that'll be kind of fun to do. And they said, no, you won't be talking. You'll just look like him. And what? So it was a film, how do I explain that? There was a guy that looked like Mikhail Gorbachev. He was doing some weird film he was in a band called Gorby and the Red Hots. They were singing a song, and I don't know where they got the money. It was a big production shot on 35 millimeter Panavision film, and it was before the Berlin Wall. This was like 1988. And they had a big maze built in a sound stage where Gorbachev's over here in one shot and Reagan's over here kind of, and I thought it'd be fun to do prosthetics. That might be cool. No, it was bad grease paint, and they just shot me about here to the back wall so you couldn't tell. It was horrible makeup. and they smoked up the stage, and I think they were just burning tires because it like really hurt your lungs. And then they had this guy on a ball that broke down the Berlin Wall, and all these singers came out, and they had all these lookalikes. They had a guy that looked like the Pope. They had a girl that looked like Sigourney Weaver. There was a girl, Angeline, who, if you know any Hollywood memorabilia, she was famous for doing nothing. She had billboards around Hollywood.
This was before people were routinely famous for doing nothing.
Yeah. And so my job in this, I had to, as Ronald Reagan, hold Angeline's leg, looking lascivious. Well, all right, oh, while they sing this stupid-ass song. And we shot this, I'm thinking my career's over, Luckily for me, bad for the production company, whoever the investors were saw what was happening, and they just skipped town and stuck the production company with about $200,000 worth of bills. And so the production company called us and said, we're trying to get the money. We can't even find these guys. And I never got paid. It never came out, which is probably a good thing. But you learn, okay, kind of check out who you're working for. That was a weird project.
That's fair, but you still,
you learn.
You're going to learn.
You're going to learn. Yeah.
So the mistakes, I can name my mistakes. I own my mistakes. But the mistakes are the business side of things. I got a casting director disappointed me early in my career, didn't show up for something. And I, feeling my oats, took her to task, and she listened. And I was not established. And I didn't know at the time that was her payment to me for screwing up, was she listened and then never called me again. So I've learned on the business side of things, that if somebody does you wrong, save it. It's a good chip. You can use it down the road, maybe.
Yeah.
But as an artist, I don't think it's a good way to think about in terms of mistakes. My mother was an art teacher, and she used to have, if a student would be drawing a flower and say it didn't go the way the student wanted it to, and the student would bring her the piece of paper and say, I need a new piece of paper because I made a mistake. She said, make your mistakes like they're on purpose and turn that into a leaf. And now you've got a different flower than the one you intended. But you learn as an artist to see the value in the unexpected, to see the value in things not going your way. And so I think I think there are mistakes that you can make as a business person. But I think to enter into any artistic endeavor with the fear of a mistake is a bad protocol.
Yeah, go for it. In other words,
go
for it. And if you're going to mistake big.
And we were talking. Well, I don't want to. It's an R-rated film, but we were talking about a mistake in a Tarantino film where somebody cut their hand and made use of it. Don't go to cut your hand, but recognize that if something unexpected happens, and a green actor, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but if you're on a set and somebody muffs a line or something and they waste time saying, I'm sorry, this person doesn't know what they're doing yet. They'll end up knowing what they're doing, but pros don't waste time saying sorry. You go back to one, let's do it again, or you just keep going. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I think the biggest mistake a new artist or actor, anybody in the industry could do is not jumping into as many projects as possible. I think there's a lot of people that it's weird, even though there's more content and more democratization than ever before in terms of what's being filmed and how it can be filmed. There's a lot of my friends who are starting out in the industry are saying, well, I don't want to do student films and I don't want to do indies. And I said, up until 5 years ago, that's all I was doing. I was making either $0 or maybe on a good one like $75 or $100 a day, which is nothing. But that's where I learned. That's where I learned how to be a PA. That's where I learned how to be a good listener and how to really understand the ins and outs of the industry. So I think the biggest mistake you can make when you're starting out is thinking that you're above the material or you can't do this or this because it might come back to bite you later. But it's like, you know, as long as it's not something that you know, you're like, oh God, I hope no one ever sees this. And we all have those projects. I mean, there's a few short films that I did 10 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? But I was broke and desperate, and you do stupid things.
And you learn something.
And you learn something, exactly.
Always learn.
And then once you are established, I think the other biggest mistake you can make is saying yes to everything. And that's something that, you know, I think the Joker said it best in The Dark Knight. He said, if you're good at something, never do it for free. And
there you go.
That's something you got to remember too. Once you are established, like, don't just say yes to everything, because that also dilutes your brand and dilutes other artists' ability to make money, because we don't get a lot of money from what we do, and it's a really imperative that we do get a fair price, because your next gig might be a year or two from now. You know.
Yeah.
I think we're at time, though.
We're at time. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you guys for
Thank you,
coming.
everybody.
Thank you,
Come down
guys.
and say hi. We'll be here
Come
for a
say
while.
hello, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That was a great question, Anna.